Welcome to this special episode of the Policing Matters podcast brought to you by Kenwood. I'm Greg Fries, the editorial director of Police One, and I'm looking forward to this conversation about public safety radio systems. I'm joined by three panelists, Chris, Tom, and Chris, and together we are going to discuss radio systems, communication challenges, and their advice for evaluating and selecting a radio system.
This episode is sponsored by Kenwood, a trusted leader in public safety communications. Kenwood Atlas P25 systems provide reliable, secure, and flexible solutions for mission-critical operations, ensuring seamless interoperability across agencies. Combined with Kenwood Viking P25 radios, first responders get the clarity, durability, and advanced features they need to stay connected and operational in any situation. Learn more at efjohnson.com.
First, let's meet Chris, Tom, and Chris. Chris Tucker, and then Tom, and then the other Chris. If you could start by just telling me about your role, experience, and department, and that's how we'll get started.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Chris Tucker, Warren County Emergency Services, up in the northern part of North Carolina, probably 50 so miles northeast of Raleigh. That's where we're located, right the Interstate 85 corridor. Warren County population is around 18 to 19,000, give or take whatever census you want to see, 544 square miles. So it's a pretty big county. Geographically, we are very, very diverse geographically. One side of the county, we have a huge lake. The other side of the county, we have a huge lake, and we have a little, what we call ravines in between. More dirt roads than anywhere in the state of North Carolina. So we are very, very rural county. We service, right now we have 4 EMS stations and 15 fire stations. And also the radio system operates for the sheriff's department. So that's a little about me. Also, I'm a volunteer fire chief for Ridgeway. This is my 31st year with them. That's where I got my start. And then in 2000, I started with EMS and promoted up to where I'm at now as emergency service director. So it's been a long road, and the radio system that I've got right now, I've got a lot to talk about today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. Tom, introduce yourself.
Yeah, Greg, thanks for having me here today. I work for Will County Emergency Management Agency. We're in Illinois, if you're familiar with Chicago. Will County is, southwest of Chicago. Our biggest town is Joliet, so maybe you've heard that. We're famous for prisons and that kind of thing. In our county, EMA oversees our radio system. This is about my 15th year with our agency. In the last 8 or 9, I've been the radio manager. We've got about 700,000 residents in the county, and which keeps us pretty busy. We're in our second trunk system. We previously had an EDAX system before our P25, so we've been doing trunking for quite a number of years now. We've currently got a 12-channel 9-site phase 1 system that's a simulcast, and it's got a 6-channel multicast site that kind of fills in some coverage areas for us. We've got about 5,000 subscribers on our system, so that definitely keeps us busy. We service all kinds of public service and public safety agencies, everything from our sheriff's office, our county detention facility, animal control, township road districts, things like that, as well as fire districts. I kind of started off my career as a volunteer with EMA, and eventually was able to get a professional job, which I was pretty excited for. And up until I got promoted to this job, I had a lot of experience with conventional things, and kind of got trial by fire and dropped in the deep end with trunking. So happy to talk about that today, and share some pitfalls that I had, and maybe some of your viewers can learn from my mistakes and not make those same ones. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, when you mentioned subscribers, do you mean like a subscriber is like an individual radio that might be used by different people, or is it a person?
We usually look at subscribers as a number of actual radios. So it's right around 5,000 radios that are on our system. If I had to, I should have this number, but if I had to guess, I'd say upwards of 70 or 80 different agencies that we serve. Some of them are, mutual aid agencies, so not primary dispatch, but somewhere in that area.
Okay, great. Chris Schoenfeld, thanks for your patience. Tell us a little bit about you and your experience.
So my name is Chris Schoenfeld. I'm from Randolph County, Indiana. We're in the east central portion of Indiana. We're a rural agricultural county, so we're a large county basically in the size of Indiana. We have 842 square miles that we're responsible for. But I started emergency services back in 1984. I retired out of law enforcement in 2009 and became the county's emergency manager in 2009. And then through 2009 to 2016, that's the only job I did. But Indiana has where they combine a lot of agencies. So I run the 911 center and emergency management. So we have 11 police departments that we dispatch for, like 10 fire departments. And then we have one EMS station that we dispatch for. That EMS station is a standalone. We've got other EMS in 2 of our city fire departments. So we run a phase 2 system here. We're a standalone county. I mean, we're not on the state system except as a secondary backup in case ours goes down. But I've been doing that since being the 911 director since 2016. And I've got about 3 years left, I think, and then I'm eligible to get that second retirement.
Well, congratulations. Chris, let's stay with you. You've said you've been at this since 1984, so you've probably seen a lot of come and go with radio systems. Trying to think about like your recent or current challenges that exist for your jurisdiction and radio systems. What are you either recently solved or what are you currently trying to solve related to radio systems?
Well, the current issue that we're trying to resolve, and I believe we're there, is Randolph County is a state line county. So you go 8 miles east of where I'm sitting at right now, and the Indiana-Ohio state line's right there. So we have a lot of communication problems with our neighboring county, which is Darke County, Ohio. They operate off of a state-owned system over in Ohio, and we were when they went to that state-owned system from their VHF system, we lost the ability to communicate with them. So with our private system, we can put on whoever we want on our system. So we work with Darke County, and we allowed them to access our system, work with their vendors, get new consoles that would communicate with our systems, and we're now able to communicate with one another without having to involve Indiana or Ohio.
Okay, that's a great example. How about you, Chris Tucker? What's the challenge you're either trying to solve right now or have recently solved related to radio systems, communication challenges?
I have got several challenges. One is funding. I want to mention this up front. So my county is different from most counties. The sheriff's department, or sheriff's offices like they be called, they run the 911 center. So they have funding that comes in from cell phones and phone services, 70 cents a month. I'm pretty sure it's like that everywhere, that goes into a 911 fund. Okay. They take care of everything inside the PSAP center. Emergency management handles from where the coax goes outside of the building to the towers. So guess what? We don't have that fund, unlimited money that comes in. So everything is either grant-based or county-based. So maintenance is one of our biggest issues. We have got 3 tower sites that we keep up, and the state has 3 Viper sites, 800 megahertz sites that we simulcast off of with a limited budget. Warren County's budget last year was $44 million. So I just heard Tom tell that his budget was $8 million radio system. I don't think we'd ever get to the $8 million radio system. So that's one of our challenges is funding. We're a small rural county. And the system we're operating now on is what we call a simulcast system. Everybody's familiar with that. We have VHF, and we also have 800 megahertz. The state maintains the 800 megahertz, where the county maintains the Viper side. The simulcast system was put in 2015. So the maintenance that we've had over the years has been very limited, because you could understand then, I think it was $360,000 total what they spent to put these towers in and everything, put the little buildings up. And just so this is my second year in as director. Now I've got to find out what I've got to do to keep that maintenance going. And over the last year, we have had nominal problems, one behind the other. Microwaves burning out, $12,000 a piece. UTVs on top of the towers going bad. Cat 5 cables. Just numerous problems. And one of the other things is our local radio professionals that we have, most of the guys that are familiar with this system have retired. So now we've got new guys coming in, and they just don't know what to do. They don't know where to start. They have to phone a friend every time they come in. Hey, Chris, I don't know what's going on. How can you tell me? So over the course of the last 6 months, I have got to be a pretty good radio man. I can go into the radios and see, a microwave, see if, what the codes are on them, if it's a major alarm or minor alarm, and the comms, and do a real check. And sometimes I can fix it pretty fast, and then sometimes we're still down. So right now, currently, we have been down. Our full system has been down since October the 6th. So we're operating on a 2-tower backup system, just on VHF, paging out, and then it's simulcast over to Viper. Once we found that out, I actually had our radio company that we deal with come in and do a synopsis for us. And I did not really like the information they give me, their dollar amount. I like, this is no way. Overnight, you just can't come up with that kind of money. So we actually had a third-party vendor come in, and I got a quote for them. They come in and actually went through my towers and pulled the data off to see what it was, and come back and give me the number. So one of the main problems that we're faced right now, 2 of our towers, the UTVs at the top are bad. They're intermittently bad. So to replace those, do the new sightings and everything, we're looking at $149,000. And I had $40,000 in my budget. So $40,000 was spent to use to fix the repairs of radios and maintenance on it already. So I need $149,000. So what did I have to do? Went through my budget and got as much as I could. And the radio company that we currently deal with, we actually done a lease to own deal. So I pay a 25% down payment, and then I make the payment next year and next budget year to be able to get it. So we just got that contract signed, and that's going to take 14 to 16 weeks to come to fruition. But right now with our backup system, one of the problems that we're having, we have distorted tones, and we have been working on it for 3 weeks, and we have run data, and nobody can tell me what the distorted tones are for. So that's some of the problems that we have.
Yeah. It sounds like you got a lot going on there. Tom, you have a much bigger population that you're serving, plus like all those subscribers and partner agencies. Like, what are the challenges that maybe you're having that might be different than Chris and Chris?
So I was making some notes as both Chris's were talking, and I'm experiencing some of the exact same things. Chris mentioned that he's, first of all, yes, it was $8 million system. I don't get that much annually, right? It's significantly less than that. So I think like most folks, we're doing the best we can with the budget that we get. But in Illinois, there's a statewide system. It's not publicly owned; it's privately owned. So we have, and they do charge a user fee. Where our agency, we don't charge our subscribers a user fee. We figure it was paid with tax dollars. It ought to be available to all agencies. So one of the struggles that we have is that part of our county agencies use the statewide system. In other parts of the county, they use our system. As Chris mentioned, that with Ohio, there, we can give IDs out to anybody that we want to on our system, so they can switch to ours to talk to us. It's a little harder for us to get IDs on our state system because there's just money involved, and I don't frankly have the budget to purchase all those. So I suppose our biggest hurdle is we're just trying to figure out how to bridge that gap so that if there was an incident that required multiple agencies to respond, that we can come up with a common operating platform so everybody can communicate effectively. We're making some progress in there, but that's the area that I probably spend the most time concerned about, thinking about, trying to figure out. So that's it's kind of a big deal for us, is to kind of solve that. But yeah, and as Chris Tucker was saying, you know, funds are what they are. You know, I'm very fortunate that we were able to front load a lot of the equipment for our radio system with the warranty also, so I'm not having to pay annual fees with that. But it's, you know, it's absolutely something that we think about. You know, we had a microwave link or two that actually went down this year too, so we're trying to scheme out how to get that fixed up. So I absolutely understand everyone's frustrations and struggles with that too. So
Yeah, I want to stick with you, Tom, and just thinking about, like, you know, say a new firefighter, they come on, they key the radio, and they make a transition, and you know, then you have opportunity, say, to explain to them, hey, you're part of a statewide system or you're part of a county system. Like, how would you explain what makes a statewide system in Illinois to that end user, that subscriber?
yeah, so Greg, how I generally explain how our radio system works is I'm pretty passionate about that, and I can get off in the weeds pretty easily. So I like to explain it like it's like a cell phone, right? There are Android users, there are iPhone users. I'm told people still have flip phones. I haven't seen one in quite a long time, but to the end user, they don't particularly care what's in the back end, right? They want to know that when they push send or they text somebody, that the caller, that the text goes through. So I like to use that to really explain how it all, you know, works. We don't particularly limit the makes and models of radios anybody can use on our system, as long as it's a P25 compliant radio. We'll generally want to see one if we haven't seen it, just to make sure there's no quirks with it. But we really tell folks that, hey, when you select the talk group you want and you hit the big button on the radio and you get the push to talk grant tone, there's a lot of stuff happening in the background, different vendors, different makes and models of the equipment that make the system all work together. But it's, you know, we try to make it very simple. Hey, it's a computer controlled system. We take care of the back end stuff so that they can be as successful on the front end stuff. Some of our more technical users, I might show them a little bit behind the curtain. But we try to keep it pretty simple so that they aren't concerned about that. We'd rather them focus on being, you know, a trained firefighter, a trained police officer, public works employee, things like that. So we just don't want to bore them with all the details, but let them know that we've got it taken care of. So.
Okay. Yeah, they just want it to work, right?
Right,
and
exactly.
Chris, I'm thinking about your county system in Indiana. Do you have users that are interested, like, what does it mean that we have a county system, or how might you explain it to them in a way that makes sense?
Where it gets into the county system versus the state system is whether or not we can talk by distance is the biggest concern. Our county system, we're limited how far outside of the county we can broadcast, whereas our state system, the state of Indiana has it set up that we are allowed to use our radios anywhere within the district. Indiana, the district we're in is called District 6. It's a 13 county area. So feasibly, I mean, we could leave Randolph County, go up to, let's say, Howard County, which is our far northwest county, and we could still reach our dispatch center without having to worry about losing them. So if we go outside of that 13 county area, then we have to worry about getting over onto what they call mutual aid channels and stuff like that. That's really the only big difference, other than, you know, like Tom, it's a big computer system. They don't really need to know, you know, the back end of it. I have a hard enough time keeping up with it myself. So it's one of those things, as long as they know how to find our system, if our system goes down, how to get over onto our backup system. That's my main concern is that, and they struggle with that sometimes, trying to get from, you know, one system to the other, or finding the direct channels, the NIPS pack channels. So I don't have any desire to go any further in the weeds with it than, you know, here's our law, here's our dispatch channels, talk on that, and we'll keep it simple.
Yeah. Chris, I'm learning fast. I think Warren County, it sounds like you're running a county radio system. Is that the case? Am I understanding it correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We're using two. We're actually using the state and the county, but the county actually has its own private system. Yes.
Okay. And when, like in Tom, in your case, having a county system, what are some of the benefits that you're trying to realize for your end users with the system you have?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest benefit for us is we really can control our own destiny, right? If there's something that we want to do, we can do it. I don't have to ask permission from a vendor to like add a talk group or add an agency, or if ABC Fire Department buys 4 new radios, okay, we'll just turn on 4 IDs and program the radios, right? It gives us a lot of freedom to really operate the system the way we see fit without having to worry about, oh gosh, we're only allowed 100 user IDs. There's no limit either, financially or technically of what we can do, right? We do some crazy things with conventional patches. I've got some really creative radio techs that are able to help me solve a lot of problems, which really is great because it makes it a whole lot more useful for the end user. And I think what really helps us is that, we don't charge a user fee, right? We've paid for all this upfront at a time. The only thing that really would prohibit any agency from coming onto our system is the cost of the radio equipment itself, right? So once they make that purchase, we do a little IGA with them, a little paperwork out of the way, and we turn the radios on and they go to town with whatever they want to do. So we've been able to save some, smaller departments a ton of money because they're not paying user fees. And so we feel pretty good about that. That's, one of those good at government working together kind of things, which doesn't always seem to happen. So we're pretty happy about that. The other thing that we really like is that, at least in our case, by owning our own system, we also have our own radio techs. So I've got 4 full-time techs in myself. Most of them have assigned vehicles. They have parts, equipment, their tool bags with them. They take them home. So if something breaks in the middle of the night, which we hope it doesn't, but occasionally does, I'm not waiting on a third-party vendor to come in and fix something, right? My guys just driving to work. They see what's going on and they get it fixed. And that really helps us to build strong relationships with our users and our community. So they can depend upon the fact that we can deliver them a really high-quality system for frankly little to no cost to the end user. So we just like the fact that we can kind of do those things, whereas we think that if we had a statewide system or we're part of a larger system, that we might not have that freedom to do those things. So again, that's probably the biggest benefit for us, that we can kind of control how we want to manage and operate our own radio system.
Today's first responders need a communication system they can count on. Kenwood Atlas P25 systems provide unmatched reliability, resiliency, and security, ensuring seamless coordination across agencies. With flexible, scalable architecture and advanced cybersecurity, Atlas is built to perform in the toughest conditions. Learn more at efjohnson.com.
Chris, thinking about your system, what are other benefits that your end users in those departments are receiving by being part of the county or regional system that you have?
So for our county, one of the benefits on the county system is the radios around $1,000 on the VHF side. If you use the state system, anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000, depending on the flavor of the week. So the benefit for the end user, for the local volunteer fire departments, if you use the VHF, you're weighed in 1/10 of the cost almost. So when they go buy radios, if the system is working, VHF, it's wonderful. It's a whole lot cheaper. If you have to replace them in 5 years, place $1,000 radio compared to some of the newer models, $8,000 and $6,000. That's one of the benefits. The non-benefit part of that is the system has got to work to be able to use that VHF to cover all the county. That's the problem that we're having now. So with the Viper system, we have the 800. The State Highway Patrol actually maintains that system. They have alarms and everything. So New Year's Eve, I was getting ready to go to a New Year's Eve party. My phone rings. Hey, Chris, we're all completely down. The radio system is down. I'm like, what? Everything. She says everything. So Viper actually had a lightning strike. and it shut the whole entire, because the main trunk line there shut down. So it crippled everything in our county. And about 5 minutes later, the Viper tech from the State Highway Patrol, he said, "Chris, I'm on the way to you. I'm about 35 minutes." So I met him at the facility. I unlocked the gates for him and went in. We flipped one breaker and come back on. So on a sunshiny day, the Viper system, it does not cost us anything to maintain it. They maintain it for us, and we can utilize their radios system. But the problem is that other end of buying the radios. So right now, something is getting ready to happen the end of June, TDMA compliance on the Highway Patrol Viper system. We have, just in EMS, we have got 9 radios on mobile radios that we got to replace, around $45,000, just because they're not TDMA compliant. And that's not even getting into the portables that we have to replace. So, it has its benefits one way or the other. But with the state operated system, we can average about 50-mile radius outside our county. It'll work on certain channels, our home channels. Now, we have a lot of TAC channels or special division channels that will work throughout the state. Hurricane Helene, I was actually deployed 6 hours before the hurricane and 7 days after. When I got there to run a state shelter, all we had was Viper radio. Nothing VHF radio. VHF didn't work at all. So we had to utilize the state system. And I was actually talking from Asheville, North Carolina, back to Raleigh to the EOC. That was the only line of communications I had, because cell phones were gone. All the towers were down for 3 days. So it works really good. But then on day 2, it got overloaded and it kept trunking. So that was one of the things. It just didn't have enough trunking to support the amount of operations that we had going on North Carolina mountains. It was quite a bit.
Chris Schoenfeld, one of the themes I've heard from both Chris and Tom is being frugal or fiscally responsible. These systems are expensive, and we, whether it's the hardware or the software to run it, what kind of choices have you made in your county to be good, responsible citizens of the funding that you're receiving from the citizens?
Okay, so in Indiana, we have different ways of funding. We have what's called our 1222 budget. Indiana has a governing board, a 911 governing board, and all the cell phone money and all the other landline money goes there. They distribute it back to the counties, and it goes into a non-reverting fund. And we can use those funds to take care of anything that's 911 related or CAD related. And then on our other side, we have the county general budgets. They put money in there, and we cover the things that we're not allowed to cover under 1222, like our tower maintenance. Towers are not allowed. Towers are not considered 911. They're considered infrastructure. So we're not allowed to use those 1222 funds in Indiana. So we have to use our county general funds for that. So we use those varying funds. There's also a LOIT, but in our county, they've not activated the LOIT to be used for 911. So we don't use LOIT funds. But those 2 funds, they cover the cost of almost everything. And it's worked pretty well. I haven't had to go back to our county council and ask for additional appropriations or anything to do that. Now we've had to have some purchases added into the budget, such as some of the radio equipment, coaxing our 1 tower here at the jail. But it's all worked out pretty well between the state funds that we get and then the county general budget. We haven't had any problems with that.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you've all had success in, explaining to the decision makers, the elected officials, what the needs are for your system and what it's going to cost. Tom, thinking about, say, the fire chiefs, police chiefs, emergency managers listening to this podcast, what's your advice for them to hear the concerns that the elected officials might have and then address those concerns to make sure they can secure the funding to be able to put in a modern radio system?
Yeah, we've been pretty fortunate in Will County. I've had tremendous support from both my department director, our county board, and our elected county executive over the years for communication things, right? We got our first trunked radio system. We had a pretty significant tornado in the late 90s that came through Plainfield, Joliet, and Crest Hill. It was before we had we had a very basic, I think our sheriff was using like a low band system at that point. So, communications, I'm told, were a little bit rough. That was a bit before my time, but the output of that is that the county made a commitment to improving that. And we were able to, at the time, get the EDAC system. And then, when that kind of went end of life, we were able to, get our P25 system. But I think it's really important to stress to the decision makers, whether county elected officials, police chiefs, fire chiefs, the importance of finding the right solution, right? I tell folks all the time here that I would love it if our radio system is the right solution for your need, but it might not be, right? And if it's not, I at least want to make sure that I'm helping them find the right solution, spend their tax dollars wisely. Don't go chasing something that's not going to be the right solution for them. So we try to strike the balance between, being fiscally responsible, finding the right solution, and making sure everyone gets what they need to be successful operationally. But we've had, tremendous support over the year from all of our electeds and our various departments. So that's kind of how we handle that kind of thing.
That's great. Chris Tucker, your county, I think, is reminiscent probably for a lot of listeners, rural, small population. Law enforcement has funding mechanisms in place, but fire and EMS, probably volunteer, maybe not a reliable funding stream. Again, thinking about like those decision makers, like what's the advice to tell them the story, especially if volunteer and rural fire and EMS, to make sure that their needs are considered in radio system decisions?
So right now, I'm very fortunate. My whole 5 board plus my county manager is very supportive of the radio system. They know that it's essential to us. So I don't have to go in and beg, bar. I go in and say, this is what we're working towards. This is the problem we have. This is what it's going to cost to upgrade today. And then say, if we wait 2 years to do upgrade, what is it going to cost with inflation and everything in 2 years? Is what we have now, is it going to last that long? And then go in there, the other synopsis, you tell them, say, hey, you are a resident of this county. We are vital to when that page goes out, we want that page to go out. So what if you were having some type of episode there at the house, right? And we want to make sure that page gets out so emergency responders can respond to you. And you give them a little story like that. And I have not had any backlash from any the county. The problem is it's so many different projects they have to fund. Right. New schools and everything. It's just, you come in and ask them for $149,000 in the middle of a budget year, not at budget time, but in the middle of the budget year. And they say, well, Chris, do you have any of this money in your budget? Well, no, I have some, and I can maybe, downsize some of my budget, some things that I wanted to get this year cut out to get some of it. But at the end of the day, I have to rely on them for finance, and grants are few and far between. So it at the end of the day, it has to go back to the taxpayers. And, the taxpayers elected those 5 board officials to help me navigate that. And they put me in that position to try to maintain, to be a good steward of that money. And I do everything in my working brain to make that happen on a daily basis. Sometimes it's a very big challenge, I just wonder, when I get this next upgrade, what is my next step? How much money is my next upgrade going to cost? Right. If this one costs me $140, if I wait another year or 2 years, will it be $250? Will it be more than that? And then the current ongoing to maintain this, I've got to add that to the budget. So it's a lot of things in there that's going through my head right now with funding and talking to the county board. But the main thing is to keep them, educate them, let them know, go in and say, hey, this is how many towers we have. This is what it does. And just, educate them. And most of the time, it is not a real hard fight. But unfortunately, like this time that I had, I had to go in the middle of the budget year, and it was not very pretty at the time. It took me about 30 minutes to sit up there and talk through everything. It worked out. So we're going in the right direction, I hope.
That's great that you're getting that support. And as you were answering, what I was thinking of is just kind of to outline it is like it's ongoing education and information, and then it's explaining to those decision makers, here's the problem we're experiencing, here's potential solutions to that problem, here's what it's going to cost us to solve that problem, and here's what it will cost us if we don't solve that problem right now in terms of like it getting worse or the ongoing costs. Chris Schoenfeld, at least to me, that's a good way to think about these problems. Are there other things that you've used to keep those elected officials informed so they can make good decisions about funding and making sure your radio system's supported?
We have quarterly meetings. In Indiana, we're required to have LEPC meetings and an emergency management advisory committee meetings. And on top of that, I've thrown in a policy and operations board meeting for the 911 side. And the people that are required to attend those meetings are all either senior elected officials or chiefs of other agencies and NGOs. So during those quarterly meetings, we usually have a commissioner and a council person in there, and we discuss the various things that's going on with our systems. Our system's fairly new. I mean, it's only like 4 years old, so we haven't had a whole lot of problems with it other than, the occasional lightning strike or something like that. But bringing those folks into those meetings and having them there in those meetings with us quarterly, they stay up to date and they're aware of what's going on. And then they can go back and then tell the other council members and commissioners, hey, this may be an issue. An example would be we just had our vendor here removing some coax off our tower and installing a new one. And one of the vendors told us that the arm on our tower that holds one of the antennas appears to be a little loose. So he's saying, you need to get somebody up here to look at that and maintenance it. So that was brought up there in our last meeting so that they're aware of that. I've got the funds, or I should have the funds to get the people here to cover it. So it's not really a big deal. I don't need to go back to them, but they're aware. And if it's something where I need to have funds, then they're already aware of it. And it's not a complete shot in the dark to them.
Yeah, that sounds like a great opportunity when you have if you will, a captive audience. There's meetings they're required to attend, making sure it's worth their time and that you're giving them information to not only understand the current state, we've got this arm that needs to be tightened, but maybe to be thinking about like, hey, we've got a new system that's 4 years old, but in another 4 years, we might need maintenance and service, and we got to be planning. Hey, Tom, you mentioned that it sounds like other counties or organizations come to you looking for radio advice, and you tell them like, you maybe don't need our system, but you need the system that's going to work for you. What questions or things do you want to make sure when one of your colleagues in emergency management or a police chief or a fire chief, as they're shopping for a new radio system, what are the questions they should be asking vendors?
The thing I always tell people is, as you said, don't be afraid to ask for help, right? Not everybody knows everything. And I always tell people too, like, be careful of being, sold by like a salesperson, right? There's no perfect radio system. There will always be some coverage area that's not as great as you want. It might be indoor, it might be all kinds of terrain that causes problems. No system is ever 100% perfect, right? There's always something. But I would really tell people, just make sure you know what you're asking for. We've had experience with trunk systems. We had an idea what we thought that we wanted, but we still went out and hired a consultant to help us write our RFP. And they were able to maybe say, oh, hey, you guys said you wanted, A, B, and C, but had you thought about, D, E, and F, maybe that might fit your needs better. But I think my biggest advice to anybody out there looking for a system is really, evaluate what it is that you're trying to do. Are you trying to work with just your neighbors? Do you want to work with all your county partners? Do you want to be able to talk to people in your state? What options are available? Um, as both Chris have said, cost is a factor, right? Can you afford that multi-$1,000 multi-band radio, or maybe you can only afford a single band, or maybe VHF is where you need to be at, right? Just make sure you understand what you're asking for, and just maybe a little bit too into the weeds. But if you're looking at building your own system, don't overlook things I would call like the basics, right? Good power, good grounding, and good data links. If you don't have those three things, you have the best RF design radio system in the world, but it's not going to perform very well because you're going to have connectivity issues, or you're going to have power issues, right? Without those things, you're really going to have probably a bad experience. And I think the last thing the last two things I would think about is, what does ongoing maintenance and warranty look like, right? Sure, everybody's got a 24-hour phone number, but how is it staffed? What's their response time on holidays and weekends? Because inevitably something's going to break on one of those days, right? And it's going to be beyond your capabilities. So how long will it take them to get back to you? What's a reasonable time for your organization? And then, as far as like warranties, is that something you could like front load, right? Like we front loaded an additional 10-year warranty on our radio system because I knew we had the money then. Our county board was very favorable for that kind of thing. I didn't know as time went on, would we be able to make that purchase annually? So we were able to negotiate that up front, so we don't have to worry about that for at least, I don't know, for us 4 or 5 more years. That was a huge thing for us. It made it a lot easier to kind of think about. So those are the kind of things that I would think about if I was going to talk to somebody or be looking at a new radio system.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Chris Schaefeld, thinking about like other counties that are on a state line, I mean, that's like a huge number of counties. As they're evaluating a radio system, what's some of the advice that you would have for them? Again, counties that have a state line neighbor, what questions or advice what should they ask, or what's your advice as they consider a radio system purchase?
Well, the big thing is making sure that they've got somebody knowledgeable that's writing the RFPs. When we went through our process, we actually hired an architect that has experience in the radio spectrums and all that, because he builds communication systems. So get those guys in there. They're pretty familiar with it already. Have them build the RFP based upon what you're looking for. You want to make sure that you're able to be interoperable with the neighbors next door. And like I said, in our case earlier, us going as a standalone county, it allowed us to bring in Darke County, Ohio, without any issues and not having to ask permission from the state of Indiana or the state of Ohio. So regardless of what system you choose, get all that information that you want collected, and then have a really good committee group that's representative of your county, and making sure that everybody's at that table that can meet or ask the questions to make sure that the needs are being met. We had all of our county departments there. We had representatives from the town marshals, and then the Fire Chiefs Association. And we just made sure that everybody had a voice in this meeting. And that when we went through the processes of selecting the vendor and then selecting the other components to our tower system, that it wasn't just me making that decision or our elected officials. And we kept everything within the proposed budget that the commissioners had set out and the council had set out. So having that person there takes a lot of stress off of you by having that contractor there to handle the entire process. It makes it much, much easier. And they're more familiar with things. Like Tom had said, making sure that everything's being met, and you're not just limited to, when you get into the departments and they can't afford the most expensive vendor, but they can afford some of the other ones, to us, it doesn't matter here in Randolph County what vendor you're using to put on our system, as long as it's P25 phase 2 compliant. That's all I care about. And then the other stuff works itself out. They can go as cheap on the radio as they want to, as long as it meets their needs. That doesn't matter to me as long as it's, phase 2. So, but the contractor is a big way to go. You've got to be willing to pay that money up front to have that person do all that work for you.
Yeah, this really stands out to me, that I think of all three of you of having this a really high level of knowledge about radio systems and communication challenges and collaborating with multiple departments. And you've both said, like, you need more expertise to do this right. And then also the collaborative nature of it, that you've got to get all these different groups, user groups involved in making the decisions about what the system needs to be able to do, and their buy-in. Chris Tucker, thinking about what additional advice might you have for somebody that comes to you and says, hey, we're making a radio system change. Give me some advice before I embark on this journey.
Well, one of the biggest things is educate yourself. Figure out what you want. What is the purpose of what is going to serve? That's the first thing. Sit down and write that out. Hey, what kind of system do I want? And then educate yourself about all the pros and the cons. That's the first step in making sure. And then the next step is seeing your funding feasibility. How much funding do we have? Are we going to be able to pay for this one lump sum? Are we going to finance it? Different things like that. And then that's when you have to educate your folks in the council to make sure, hey, this is the plan that we want to go with. These are options, and educate them and weigh their time in to see, hey, which one of these is going to be better for us in the long run. So education is the big thing. I think that's one of the biggest things with me in the radio system. I try to educate my system. So when I go in, one of those radio techs are working on it, find out, hey, what are you doing? Tell me what you're doing. Why are you doing it? What's your reasoning behind this? What do we test first? And that keeps it in my head, so that if, say, I go into a county board, well, Chris, did y'all try this? And then I can say, hey, this is what we tried. This is the outcome that we have. And that's the biggest thing, educate, and then start planning today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Go ahead and start now and plan for the future, because who knows what technology is going to be here in 5 years. I don't even know. I know the technology from the system we have today to what we are building towards, it's going to be a whole lot better. But in the long run, it's going to be more costly. So that's the biggest thing is educate yourself, educate the partners that you're dealing with, and get buy-in from them, and plan now for the future. Don't wait. That's the whole deal. Everybody is scared about using funds. If you want to have something reliable, yes, the money, it's going to cost. At the end of the day, no matter whether it's maintenance, warranties, or whatever, it's going to cost. So educate yourself and plan today.
Thanks, Chris. Tom, Chris, and Chris, thank you so much for your time and this conversation about radio systems. I want to give each of you a chance to share one final short takeaway or piece of advice for the emergency managers, chiefs, people that are listening to this episode. We'll go Tom, and then Chris Tucker, and then Chris Schoenfeld. You can close us out. So Tom, one short final piece of advice.
Yeah, sure, Greg. Again, thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I hope this is going to be helpful for you guys as viewers. And I'm really passionate about radio. I think that probably showed a little bit today, but I think the biggest advice I would give anybody is really be an advocate, right? We talked about building a coalition. Talk to your users, see what they need, see what their needs are, see how you can work to help them really get there and maintain that level that they want for good communications, and understand that that this isn't building a radio system and moving on to the next project, right? This is a huge investment for time, maintenance, money. It's not like you're going to write a plan and put it on the shelf and wait for that incident to happen. You're going to be daily practically fixing something, adjusting something. You really got to make a huge investment in doing this if you want to do it right. So I would just I guess my 2 points would be build a coalition, get your people together, and kind of understand what you're getting yourself into.
Okay, thanks for that. And thanks for being here, Tom.
Sure.
Chris Tucker, a final piece of advice for our listeners.
Hey, thank you again for having me on. And the biggest thing I guess is to at the end of the day educate yourself. Know what the goal that you're trying to go to in the system, and just do your homework and make sure everything that you want in the system is going to be there. And keep your boards happy, right? Hey, give them knowledge. Even the other thing is to do a radio committee. Have more than just one person at the table. Bring all your stakeholders in. Hey, let's have a fire chiefs meeting. Bring all the fire chiefs in, EMS, sheriff's department. Hey, this is what we have. This is the situation that is currently working on. What is your input? And one of the unfortunate things, I want to throw this in for where we're at in North Carolina, we only have 2 really radio vendors to use for the whole state. It's just like almost like a monopoly. And that's the other thing is do your homework where your vendors are too. And make sure that you do it in a timely manner, because at the end of the day, the prices are going to go up. So just do your homework and be prepared.
Thanks so much, Chris, for being part of this discussion. Chris Schoenfeld, wrap us up with your final words of wisdom for our listeners.
Well, I thank for having me. It's been a learning experience. But I agree with Tom and Chris. I mean, get these groups together, bring them together so that you're not just building out of a one-person box, because that's setting you up for failure. Because if something goes wrong, then they're going to start pointing fingers at you. And get your groups in there and collaborate, and go that route, and make sure that you've got buy-in from everybody. And I'll reiterate it again. Make sure that you're hiring a professional that understands radio systems and can guide you, because I've been in the field, like I said, since '84, but that doesn't mean that I'm competent in writing an RFP or telling these vendors what I want. I'm not. And that's why you get that professional in there and let them do it. And then ultimately be prepared for the sticker shock that comes along with the system, and how long it's going to take to go from the planning phase to actually going live. It's a very time-consuming process. It's not going to happen overnight, and just be prepared for all that, because it's a long, drawn-out process.
Wonderful. Chris Schoenfeld, Chris Tucker, Tom Murray, thanks for being part of this special episode.